Hello. What is clear and what is not clear is being lied about by the formal identities of the law and by everyone else. Otherwise, that body is sensed, even if it is a majority, and they are simultaneously helped and hurt through others as humanity's groupings, as humanity individuals, and as people who speak for the humanity, which is the simultaneous species volumes valued distinctly from, non distinctly from, and simultaneously with our own as individuals, part of the species body slash IS system, with the hyper invisible but still discernible shows us it revealed to other animals with two eyes, for example, humanity with two eyes. All exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing slash S, which comes with and as even further hyper additional its identity of relationship to itself, where it is not juxtaposed with temporary slash lasting space nature's value slash value progression that we can discern is only increasingly valuable. So, but there's a Phil Cololo, for example. The name Phil Cololo is involved with identity thefts, frauds, and slanders. Also, with families named other families associated with him and with his extended family members, involved with various police departments through time since I was a kid, where they attach kids to fake ties to others, fake natures of ties to others, where they have instances where emotions or passions of little kids are described. They exploit that at other locations. They're also putting fake things in. See, these are people only capable of being manifest this way, leaving out the value of what came first, too. A certain type of victim slash hyper victim only knows how to respond this way. Otherwise, that body is sensed, even if it is a majority, even of countries. It is many ways recorded. Part of the way they get away with this is where and how they have words like logistics used. Facebook has roles with foreign and domestic military leading up to the World Trade Center before they were even a company, and then since in the context and since as roles with predicate acts. Sometimes they're people, their families. Sometimes the police forms associated with them, retired and standing. For example, and Twitter before the sale of this, they had roles with this. They hid this, and they hid their actual motivations, even when they have real ones. Increasingly, this made knaves, KNAVE, needing and directed to pretend other, only capable of pretending and thinking other. Relative to where and to how they have little kids, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to 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 self-value both the treatments of their names and groups and differences individually positive and or the ones negative. They have collusions with an identity of negative, with a criminal insidiousness, with uses of them speaking tactical ulterior from what could a value simultaneously value discern properly the identity of relativity. For example, as nature to our, with also hyper additionally the breaching method that American history is about. That's one of the things that slavery, for example, is about. Witch trials, even if they're made up, and to what extent or who made them up. We have to ask that. What are witch trials about? One thing we know, no matter who made them up with motivations, they were about slavery. We know that was entrenched against our founders, sickly distinctly from the other founders, still, because they had the counter with the other founders. That was also and is also an only increasing value. That was supposed to be left. It's inseparable from readings of statutes and of amendments and of their value and of the nature of the Constitution unabridged, which you have not heard voiced, people. So this is hidden behind identities of experts, identities of logic who have staged collusions, intercampuses because of how the sciences are manifest since before the campus, since before our founders were born. We know from some ancient times, since before the foundation of modern nations and their colonial equivalents. In other words, there was two. To an extent, they never stopped being used remotely, criminally foreign influenced, and pretending other for a breaching method that also made all groupings of humanity forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to when, where, and how as quality as fact treatment nature, syntax, therefore function, keep other things, others, ourselves, blamed for the real worst uses, also singularly used by the breaching method of the worst natures of criminal insidiousness, like overt criminal enterprises, private ones, at the same time with the interbranch, because the difference of that is also effectively assigned self-valued roles and uses of it as the adults and as the kids, as the human volume, where and how multi-front, there is also a singular agenda to keep correlation natures, short words, prevented and or changed, and that self-valued and or that person sensed. Well, we're only little kids, or in other words, or we're elderly. In other words, elderly are in a trap. The elderly homes. You think that's? Look at the suburbs that were designed before cars were even, before our founders were even born. They were designed for the torture and extortion of our founders, which we have not addressed. Telling no lies, not valuing the lies of others told. See, what our founders communicated for us is greater than what they said. And they communicated to understand the difference between truths used for lies or to screen lies, or lies and nature's pretending not to realize the value of what came first. See, in other words, this breaching method understood how nature works and communicates with us, understood reason, understood and appreciated how nature demonstrates to us our questions. What is time about? Time is about 5 distinct identities of the same hypersimultaneous identity of hypersimultaneous nature. That is the identity of space/existence, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hypersimultaneously as itself. And how we can discern this. For example, there's 5 identities of hyperpossession as, but also coming to and from, while as, and with and for itself. Where it is coming to, where value is leaving us, while it is as us, it is gaining those five distinct identities of sequence nature, have, are simultaneously a value transfer to themselves as the same shared identity. This is nature demonstrates to this to us is actually what we are capable of discerning when we discern through a microscope a slice or a transverse section of a tomato cell, a tomato, where it is translucent and semi-translucent, we can discern the chlorophyll or chloroform. See, it's one of those. I forgot, there were chloroplast. One of those. Excuse me. I don't know. But it is manifest 3 ways. As a unobstructed pattern, as the cell body, as like a little, as the difference there also with the cell nucleus, and or the order of the finite, distinct from what is grouped. And then there is the cell wall, now of an individual cell, but cell wall /S, and the walls connect. And a body of value with gases and water in it, their elements, their mixture, and the value of that, positive or negative, all kinds at once, going forward. But this is as it's a hyper native system onto its hyper native system. And the only increasing value of that, where and how more and more forever nature is made. Many pray. So the interbranch recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirms, and people tied to them. They have people use their names, and then they pretend that everyone hates them for reasons other than are real. They're lying about their motivation. So you can't record the intelligence community, but and where there are exceptions, is to make sure I was doing it right. I made them record themselves because former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, and Hartford courts and the Britain courts had effected confessions to me at West Hartford locations before the World Trade Center attack as roles and collusions with confessions to people from strangers at corners of buildings, around corners, and exceptions too regarding that because of the uses of location /S. This is also recorded, and roles with the World Trade Center attack were also involved, recorded conscious uses of our country's hiding behind directions to lie that are legitimate regarding how they have a whole bunch of all that tied to how they have all that tied to also how they have all kinds of countries shared on and off campuses. That has something to do with their roles with names on Church Street in Old Weathersfield. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with identity thefts, frauds, and slanders with the people tied to this Phil Cololo. There's a Bob Chase from Whiting Forensics who was supposed to read me a police report, and he didn't, and he lied about what his motives were. These are also behavior racketeering natures who have been between each of the campuses, roles with illusions that are only capable of being stacked in the databases by the experts on each of the sciences, originally and still per a singular method /S that our founders communicated for us to understand. See, this preaching method discerned the communications of our founders before we did. It discerned the communications of modern religions before they did. So this has self-valued roles with the stewards, for example, even though the sciences as religions or people who that don't. They also have atheists who pretend to be against religion, who are collusions with uses of those differences, where they are not really for the religion the way they are supposed to be. Says at the beginning of the Quran and at the beginning of the Old Testament, which should have been left out from the other writings of the Bible, except for how it served the function to show us how the difference is between even enemies of each other, and the difference between when they have peace. Oh, well, this is where we're going to come together. We're from this religion. We're from this religion. And the difference between that too is used consciously, simultaneously, because of the Trinity. Not just with the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /S, reception of gases and of water and its elements. Time, 5 distinct identities of sequence nature, as the value of truth before the smallest finite detail now, like of the Republic for which we stand, an ancient body, tactically, criminally foreign influence, tactically criminally re-engineered. There are proofs since semi-ancient times. And this is more probable and practical, which is also, for example, that which our founders who had to extort the other founders would have demonstrated. And this is also only made possible because of the phenomena of the resistance as the Native Americans, A through Z, while they were fighting each other. They were doing damage control. against the human bodies, volume science having been abridged, trying to syntactically express where and how they, in other words, now they're given a hyper additional identity. So, but all are forced to entertain criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and collusion as collusions with against proper descriptions of any identity of volume as any subject individually grouped together, its identity in relation to itself and the only increasing value of that. So this hurts little boys and girls sickly distinctly. And to make, because it also uses the difference of that even worse. But it also uses where and how they have self-valued roles with it per the method /S used between campuses and how that has conjunction to the victim / hyper victim reactions, non-reactions in nature itself. So the nature of debate, people want to debate behavior as predators. They can't afford to have discerned what came first. People, so I raised my voice at time in life before I tie people further with the principal child abuser. A police chief, Cintron, has a daughter named Jessica Cintron. I never met her, never saw her around. But him and also a police chief years ago, or more of them, involved with the same houses, directly and indirectly involved on off the locations associated with the police and next to them on Facebook too. They plant fake motivations. They do little tricks to make people pretend to hate people, and then give them reasons to hate them because they give them reasons to use their names. So Hartford Hospital has a whole bunch of roles with like a DeSimone family, with and Newington Police. I don't know the names of. And it's nothing personal against them. So they pretend other, and then this is how they were left with roles with criminally foreign influence, readings of statutes and of precedents, and with that torture, extortion, slander method. I mean, torture, extortion, factory nature, slavery method of everyone. Sickly distinctly. Where and how it was and is manifest sickly non-distinctly against everyone. It is manifest as a identity theft, fraud, slander method. So people are speaking about why people feel about other people are not with instances, leaving out the value of what came first. And there are connections between the campuses with this. These are also people with Ray Reynolds that attached me to faked and changed communications with him. And I don't know him, so I can't contact him. I don't even know where he lives or anything about him. I know off campuses and interstates, there are some state police families and with Connecticut police and Rhode Island police, state police. Also involved with Wethersfield Police Department, Hartford Police Department, Rock Hill Police Department, with collusions with each other. Newington Police Department, New Britain Police Department, with collusions with each other. And with roles with uses of that way worse, because also that came before that. Sandy Hook campuses, including a campus there as a prison. They're also involved. There's a Bob Chase with Whiting Forensics, involved with names on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state corrections offices, on off news locations with their investigators, retired and standing into branch, who have roles with predicate acts, with facts, methods, acts, and or natures, and the difference of that used, where and how questions are asked for a breaching method, and as that nature for the breaching method at even inter-branch locations, and the differences between that and their roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones is also involved. A whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Christina Sioka involved with men and women of the intelligence community, also medical, with Hartford Hospital, and people on their campus institute of living with identity theft, frauds, and slanders, also with families that work with her, who have been planting evidences all along Church Street and Old Weathersfield and on Main Street, all the way along there to Central Connecticut State University, all along Route 175, with the people involved with this, and uses of it as location/S are used, and where and how also evidences are how motivated to blame other things, others, ourselves for the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like slavery, which contained all three of those things, and how they blamed that on our founders when our founders told us to explain how they had to counter extort the roles with it, North and South, also with countries grouped, used remotely, enslaved that way, and self-valued enslavements. No one realizing, like for example, when they look at the security per their, if they're the wealthiest person or the poorest, overt criminal enterprises, private ones in the branches of government as criminal insidiousness nature, and the differences between that. That's used remotely by a breaching method, by people effectively knew that everyone would pretend other. Now, there are means to discern this that are inseparable from any instance, let alone the ones like where it's most overtly involved, and / simultaneously, insidiously, where the conscious part is also involved. There are foreign bodies here and there involved with being hurt here and there by a hyper foreign body that knew they were going to leave the foreign bodies out because of how they are shared on and off campuses. Because how really, why really manifest as they are, the sciences. They are a bridge, ground identities of conjunction to where and how we are a value/value progression system, and only increasing value of that simultaneously equally valued by an identity of hypervolume that is not space, but is not existence, but it is any way. Space/existence. And the slash being where and how more and more forever nature is being made. Only the extent of it is debatable. And who would try to debate it, they're going to start defending other definitions and takes on reality that are in demonstration of the same thing, and or delusions, which are also tactical, because they also involve the identities of experts on things like delusions that are tactically delusions wrong. Knew they would have to hide that, especially when presented means to hide that and get away with it. So there have been manifest roles at locations where there are databases with the groups of people, like Hartford Hospital and their Institute of Living has roles with the intelligence community and all kinds of investigators, and everything that came before courts also had collusions with where and how they're putting fake things in databases each year of our lives to maintain self-valued roles with criminal and insidious natures of positive treatment and or negative and motivations plant things. So it has something to do with a former Mayor Gold and a whole bunch of people tied to it. They're Lee Gold and Debbie Gold, I don't know, and their father and other mayors that make fake ties to me, fake natures ties to me. And a Joshua Julian is one of the ones on Facebook with Interbranch Hartford Hospital. His Facebook page has collusions with the Britain Superior Court's Facebook page and with Hartford Court's Facebook page, for example, with rape threats and child sex offenders, also medical, and the judges with probate courts, for example, right there to make sure there's problems, no problems. And so they're putting fake things in databases. They're switching names and hiding collusions at those locations because they had roles with other locations. Their family members are also involved with it. They make completely faked instances of people being together and knowing each other, and they make faked ones where they're making an exception and demonstration of the same thing, and then they're making it look like people were groups into each other, could or would speak for about each other honestly. So a whole bunch of people on off 2 Route Highway and Hang Dog Lane in conjunctions to it have something to do with people on off the state capitol and the buildings next to it who are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and attaching me and others to fake locations, fake ties, and fake natures of ties to other people. And they have roles of wire crimes with Wethersfield Police. And they have roles with descriptions of people who describe stuff. Oh, it's all this stuff. That's why pick one name in sequence. Pick one thing I've said. The courts are recorded using predicate acts methods of dishonestly describing what they feel about what other people's speech, what they say clear and not. And they do this as timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And they self-value roles with the unmarked police forms, demonstrated, recorded, confirmed, involved with other mayors before I was born, or retired before I was in second grade, third grade. They had mayors involved with affecting confessions. I found it's also courts affecting confessions, as also communicate, also in the form of statements, where they measure and maintain, only allow levels of people who are going to be fake, because also employed are people speaking about who's telling truth or not, dishonestly. Also relative where the value of what came first, nature uses, because it shows us, even if everyone agrees to lie about the past and the value of what came first, nature will demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures while in demonstration of it, and how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. We have only allowed collusions with criminal insidious natures as a means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. So Central Connecticut State University is in New Britain, Connecticut, and they have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones that are mixed with police forms who actually have predicate acts with those bodies, including leading up to the World Trade Center attack, context /S, in that context of Manhattan and interstates and foreign, with bodies foreign also. A DeMoro family is also one of the ones recorded, confessed, and Whiting Forensics has roles with this Bob Chase and Phil Cololo and other Wethersfield police fabricating fake conversations with me and switching falsified police reports and putting fake information and or no information, say they make mistakes, and then just leaving a whole bunch of different arrays of fake things to put in databases unmarked so they can fill it out later. So the courts have predicate acts methods individually grouped in together. These are the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center with names on all sides of that case, who are also involved with predicate acts with Officer Magnanos and his family out of Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his and people associated with them out of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, who are increasingly involved with all these names from other areas who have quick instances on my street. And in other words, I knew this from when I was a kid. There was a Rob Rodriguez who made all these confessions when walking by me in the field. I didn't respond to it because, in other words, I knew he was involved with the people that were involved with a pattern of predicate acts leading up to in the World Trade Center or context and since, and confessions overt and in the form of statements to relative. So I don't know the Potter family. They're recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on Facebook, involved with people with the name Chet Casper and Casper family. I don't know his sister's name, and she probably has a maiden name now. And there are people are forging and switching names at Hartford Hospital with the Leahy family and with various courts, judges, and prosecutors who have been putting fake things in databases at medical locations, at courts, with judges and prosecutors personally and professionally involved with the Leahy family, putting fake things in databases as drugs and medicines crimes and sexual crimes with kids, not legitimately with overt criminal enterprises. That the entire military on off the Hartford Hospital and the Britain campuses hospital also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with names next to Trinity College and next to campuses next to them and next to Central Connecticut State University, who have connections with each other, with child offenders, and with overt criminal enterprises, and with former director of the FBI and Robert Luskin, with predicate acts on and off the campuses, and the differences of that is also used, and with the Facebook pages. A Joshua Julian is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with a principal upskirt nature before he got caught with Wethersfield Police Chief and with people with courts and the news through time. People involved with news locations, with reports, and also he's recorded involved with names on my street with predicate acts, like a Phil Cololo. He non-verbally recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and confirmed by others. And when we went by on a bike, that is true. He has roles with the Bob Chase, with Whiting Forensics, and with names on and off the Whiting Forensics when I was a kid, who also had roles with proven principal child abusers before they got caught, as names that were roles with elderly homes used, where they are overtly / insidiously, increasingly used, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and pretending other. And how that is motivated. We can't leave out how this breaching method employed the value nature systems for the torture and extortion of our founders, let alone of ourselves. So that's why our founders had to counter extort the other founders. And we're not supposed to leave this out with their communications about what the value of the amendments are. And or the value of the debates of any nature at any location. And out here, apart from courts, is where we can force the quality of fact treating nature properly. They're recorded consciously sabotaging that and pretending their motivations. How they get away with it is how they're connecting collusions with predicate acts with facts, tricks, stacked into databases. They opened up a book when I was a kid and they said which one is different. And so we looked at it. And I looked at it, and the first thing I was going to go for in my mind was the one sitting at the piano. But I saw, oh, no, that one sitting next to the one at the piano, so it's not different because it's not alone. It's not, it's shared there. Look around, there's a table. It was like, and then there was one by itself. So I went like that, sticking my hand. Some other kid pointed, and she goes, "No, that's not it." I keep my hand up because also the difference, we're supposed to do that as a rule. Also supposed to be able to adapt, but they're doing exception is like that from the youngest ages. Anyway, so at one point, no one even got the one thing. I was right. That's like I would describe that as photographic memory. That picture, and so I was tested at reading at a 12th grade level, and I was like 4 then. And then they made me stay back because I'm for 1 year at another school for 1st grade. I mean, they made me go to another year at another school for 1st grade. What they were doing too, they're putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to kids into databases, and they're making the instances then brought up and applied and demonstrated brought up by others at other locations years later. where vertical and horizontal confessions are involved, and they also come in the form of statements, and they also come in the form of interbranch federal evidence as crimes, federal rules of evidence as crimes, methods, and value of that uses, where we can discern that simultaneously, use that to discern their consciousness and their natures as criminal insidiousness nature / hyper criminal insidiousness nature, and being and having been used remotely. This method uses the leaders of the kids, abuses of them to abuse their make them self-value. He said, she said, effectively used to further, things like that. So there are increasingly people that never had communications, and they lie about why and how they never had communications with them and their motivations for it, per uses of corners of buildings and streets, and everyone's speaking through others. So there are people at Trinity College who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the cousins of Phil Kallo is also involved with them, and there's a Jamie Carone who's also involved with the people with the departments like sociology. I never had a sociology class at Central Connecticut State University. All the departments individually grouped in together that are being and have been used criminally for an influence. These are also families with the school board and their roles with the locations. And with the guy who used the name, he said preemptively, let me just remind you guys to have decorum, who's one of the guys involved with the proven child abuser principle, more involved with some more different kinds of digital and the same more upskirt natures since too, and uses of them intersocial platforms, because the police forms are used to force, trick, hurt, and persuade, details left out and made up, and fake motivations planting. They're pretending people are raising their voices for emotional reasons and using all truths for lies, where and how they have people involved with credible gun threats, poison threats, and rape threats, and uses of the phrase passive aggression, where and how, for example, they have relative, how investigators through time have been used to pretend motivations, but be using people to plant motivations, increasingly tied to the ones putting fake things in campuses, databases, even truths used for lies, to screen lies, and motivations. The breaching method keeps out foreign bodies involvements, because there's also a hyper foreign body. So it keeps that screen too, because everyone's blaming it on the legitimate reasons and needs for them to hide lie progression. So they won't give me a response in paper, because they've been increasingly, since I was a kid, with connections between people who've been putting fake things in databases at each of the campuses I went to, and with people at private schools. The difference of that, they also employ used by it. So Wethersfield police have the word favoritism recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also involved with them with investigators and companies associated with that, where in defenses of themselves, they have collusions with wire crime acts and methods, and worse than war crimes, where our nations also have nature shows us to communicate, and science honest shows us why and how our names are a little bit possessed more by other bodies of the human species body. Some ways, really how we're supposed to be united and simultaneously independent. This breaching method made that measured and maintained, individually grouped and together, tactical ulterior, from how reason is needed to be described. So they make people have fights with each other, relative also to the uses of the confessions through statements and through descriptions of people's emotions or of other people's emotions that leave out the smallest finite detail. For example, the emotions serve a function to show if someone's leaving out the smallest finite detail. Someone's leaving out the value of what is actually simultaneously recorded. So you guys left out a lot of details, Blackfield Bulls. You left out a lot of details. You self-value that having been replace those details that the breaching method force trick you persuaded to leave out. You bring up economics, leaving out the breaching method usage. You bring up success, leaving out uses of those defenses of their syntax and their definitions of success. They can't defend and afford to have mandated law followed properly. So they have the social media involved with readings of statutes that are criminally foreign influence, left out exception nature, regarding the value of what's typed online too, regarding how they use information on people, regarding how they use the names and the substance of what is being said by the people countering it, like Mr. Snowden. I saw him trying to talk about how they're using video games and artificial intelligence to collect information on us. But see, they're speaking about this in debatable ways. There are ways that are not debatable. I asked you guys to respond for what Joshua Julian and the principal child abuser confessed. Record they spoke different things too. There are people on Covington Street, the intelligence community, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, have roles communicating things and other than they already communicated while being used by investigators, and or differentially also influenced sometimes by the foreign bodies. Also the same thing by the investigators as them involved. So New Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, before I ever lived on Covington Street, they were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with names on my street in Wethersfield. Per former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, I never seen him in Wethersfield, but he has roles with the names who planted predicate acts in my street and who attached me to fake words and conversations with themselves as officers and changed communications with themselves. So there was also officers with the name Powers who have roles with the systems of the police forms used by crime methods with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, other intelligence. There's a Dean Keyes who has roles with a Kuwaiti general and his extended family member, and then as intimate ties per her. And there are other military people with foreign and domestic military with locations involved, like and how they changed the name of that street in New Britain, and the spots next to it. There's a target that Brian Silver worked with, and that has something to do with all kinds of natures of organized crime and predicate acts and child offenders, including medical and sexual, that former and with overt criminal enterprises with grammar school kids and with middle school kids, as timed collusions with people pretending passions and emotions while they're responding to people having conversations using others' names and backgrounds. Then they time when they're going to come around the corner. This uses their volume, having spoken for the law, where it measured and maintained they couldn't. And it showed them how to get away with it by exploiting how they communicate other to the kids about who is a liar, why is a liar, what. No, in other words, no one's true. As the people who are pretending to be about truth and who's a liar and stuff like that. And with the news has been planting evidences as collusions with all sides in criminal and civil cases. And their descriptions of people are leaving out with the actual acts they describe. They're quoting them to pretend people make conspiracy theories. They spoke gobbledygook. So there was a speech pathologist named Christina Sioka, who's involved with a line of people leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, who have roles planting evidences with names also on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and as people with child abuses that were collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and fake motivations plantings, and where they have, in other words, with there's I think it's Valley Crest and Morgan Circle as in our two streets that touch Route 3. And they have name switching with former director of the FBI and courts, judges, and family members on off Trinity College with names that were planting evidences on my street here in Wethersfield through time with names on Covington Street and on Zion Street next to Trinity College with the same house since I was a kid. Identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, as with judges and prosecutors and their families involved, shipping to places. There's a Joshua Stryker who has roles with people all along, involved with judges and prosecutors and the foreign bodies, where they use the confessions in the form of statements, and they're planting fake motivations because they have criminally foreign influence uses, roles with criminally foreign influence uses of all investigators, and the value of that. Also used by the breaching method, black pupils. That's one of the things simple that this is about, and how we have black people's rights of eyes in nature showing us what colors are about, but we have theories and delusions that are criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, quality, aspects, natures, uses of locations associated with them. Or if you say it like that, no one's gonna listen to you. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Follow mandated law. Mandated law says when someone reports child abuse acts, you don't hide between the cops' roles with their kids and the courts' roles with their kids, and you don't lie about where you think about the behavior and how they attach people to fake behavior ahead of time too, so they can keep doing that at other locations. You fear God. Get on paper with them. Got to make sure I got a name. I won't play games. Respond for the Wethersfield Police, forging papers with this Phil Cololo, and further with this Bob Chase, further involved in planting evidence on my street through time. Also with people associated with Joshua Julian on the Facebook page with the child offenders, including sexual and medical at the same time, interbranch family members with digital child sex, obscured pictures, other pictures, and mixing their kids' pictures in there so they can lie about their motivations. You make sure they get me a response for the principal child abuser's confessions and regarding the Emmett further involved. And note, this is the guy who was before the meeting started saying, I want to remind people about decorum. So in other words, this guy's been put roles with foreign and domestic medical families too. And as ones as doctors, as ones with badges too. Make sure they get on paper. You understand what I'm saying. Don't make me say it more clearly, because it's uses of location /s, and they're bringing your names up. I don't know you guys. You guys know that, and don't lie when you make fake exceptions to know me with the people involved with this. Has something to do with wire crime action methods with police departments that people with the name Cololo and O'Brien have with this, and with this Phil Cololo, and with this Whiting forensic, increasingly with people with overt criminal enterprises planting evidence on my street, and people with body dumping spots that are different body dumping spots that affected confessions to me, like with this people on off the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut and conjunctions to it, and increasingly involved criminal backgrounds, and on Facebook with my name, criminally foreign influence, as collusions with people with names at campuses I went that I never had conversations with too. Whoa.